So for people that want to change their brain, the power of focus is really the entry point, and the ability to access deep rest and sleep. Because most people don't realize this, but neuroplasticity is triggered by intense focus. But neuroplasticity occurs during deep sleep and rest. What exactly is focus and what triggers plasticity? So the brain loves to be able to just do things, pick up coffee cups and drink and walk and talk and do things and not put much energy into it. When we decide to focus, what the brain really does is it switches on a set of circuits that involve the frontal cortex and nucleus basalis and some others, and it's trying to understand duration, how long something's gonna last, path, what's gonna happen, and outcome, what ultimately is gonna happen. If it's a simple example like trying to learn a new language or a new motor skill or a new way of conceptualizing something, maybe somebody's in a therapeutic process and they're trying to work through a trauma or something like that, duration, path, and outcome is built into the networks of the brain. We can do that very easily, but it takes work. And it almost has a feeling of underlying agitation and frustration. And that's because the circuits that turn on before acetylcholine are of the stress system. So when you or I decide we're gonna learn something and really dig in, norepinephrine, which is adrenaline, is secreted in the brainstem and in the body, and it brings about a state of alertness. Then our attention, which is mostly a diffuse light, is brought to a particular duration, path, and outcome analysis. This would be thinking about what somebody is saying. What are they really trying to say? A hard passage of reading. When you do that, these two systems have to work very hard, and the adult brain doesn't really want to change the algorithms it learned in childhood. But if you do those two things, you have alertness and focus. The acetylcholine and the norepinephrine converge to mark those synapses for change. The way to think about neuroplasticity, if one wants to change their brain, is bring about the most intense concentration you can to something, and then later bring about the least amount of concentration to that thing. There were some studies that were done at Stanford by a guy named Eric Knudsen that showed that plasticity in the adult brain, any age, can be as robust as it is in childhood, as fast and as dramatic.
Wow.
Provided the focus is there and it's all contingent on this acetylcholine molecule. The right approach is to bring as much focus to a behavior or to a thought or to an action pattern. And there has to be a sense of urgency. So what Knudsen lab showed, and another lab at UCSF, Mike Merzenich lab showed, is that if there's a serious contingency, like in order to get your ration of food each day, you have to learn this thing, the degree of plasticity is remarkable. But if there isn't an incentive, it just isn't gonna happen. Should I do something out of love and a real desire to learn, or should it be out of fear? But either one works. The sense of urgency is just acetylcholine. It's norepinephrine. That's all it is. The brain doesn't have a recognition of whether or not something is pleasurable or not until later. Once you start accomplishing your goal, the reward systems like dopamine start kicking in. But I think if people are interested in modifying their brain for the better, at least some, top contour understanding of how urgency and focus must converge for that to happen can be useful, because I think there's a lot of attention paid to whether or not something feels like flow, or whether or not it's what I call highly desirable states,
Right.
or whether or not you can eat a plant out of the ground that will magically put your brain into a state of plasticity. And the answer is yes, such plants exist, but what's missing is the focus component.